Hey guys, so welcome back to my channel. Today I've decided to do a short review on The Cursed Child. I raced through this book. I picked it up on the day of its release and I adored it. I've heard so many reviews and I've watched so many people talk about this book, and I think it's split fans 50-50. I think half of us adore it and half of us will never read it again. But I am part of the 50% who absolutely adored it. I thought it was such a wonderful story. I'm struggling to organise my thoughts and structure them coherently, so I've written down a few things that I want to talk about, but otherwise this is just going to be a very rambly, talkative video discussing how I feel, what I think about the latest Harry Potter book. This is the 8th Harry Potter story. It's not the 8th Harry Potter book. It is not on the same level as the books. J.K. Rowling has forever said that Deathly Hallows will be the final book, and so you have to read this separately to the books. This is not a novel, this is a play. And on the front cover it says here, based on an original new story by J.K. Rowling, John Tiffany and Jack Thorne. And then right underneath that it says a new play by Jack Thorne. So I'm getting the impression that the storyline and the plot and the ideas were brought forward by J.K. Rowling, but the actual script was written by Jack Thorne. So I don't think that J.K. Rowling did a lot of the writing in this book, which is why to some fans it didn't feel as Harry Potter-y as the novels, because J.K. Rowling does not write scripts, she writes books. And so I think it was so mature of her to bring in professional scriptwriters to depict this. If she'd have just gone ahead and said, oh yeah, I can write a script, no problem, I can translate these novels fit for the stage. Writing a script and writing a novel are two completely different things. So this story is going to have a completely different vibe to it. I loved the books and I loved the play. You just have to look at them separately. This is going to be a really spoilery review. So if you haven't read the script and you don't want to be told what it's about, then you might want to close off this video and come back once you've finished it, because I want to discuss absolutely everything about it. So the storyline of this book is set 19 years after Deathly Hallows has finished. Harry Potter is all grown up, Ron and Hermione are all grown up, and it focuses on the fact that his 3 kids, Albus, James and Lily, are going to Hogwarts, and also Hermione and Ron's children. And it's all about the next generation of Hogwarts students, and I cannot tell you how wonderful it was to dive back into this world of magic and Hogwarts and just have so much more information on all these characters that I absolutely adore. I was just enthralled from the first page. I was so happy to be back in this world because I missed it so much. The last Harry Potter book came out in 2007. That was nearly 10 years ago. So to have waited 10 years for a new book, anything, is a long time. And so it was like going back home. I loved it. You open at the first page and it starts off with basically a script version of the epilogue in the last book. It discusses about Harry's youngest son Albus being in Slytherin. I thought that was great because having Harry Potter's children all be in Gryffindor, all be wonderfully happy, no issues for the rest of their lives, that would have been very fake. At the end of Deathly Hallows, the last line was, all was well. And the word well can be absolutely interpreted in so many different ways. You cannot live a lifetime and not have some sort of struggle or hardship. Just because all was well doesn't mean all was perfect. It's such an open-ended word that she used to end the series. Who has an easy life? Everyone goes through something. So the hardships and struggles that this book follows was realistic. People were saying it was so unrealistic, it was dramatic, it was too much. Nobody said it was too much when Harry and Ron drove to Hogwarts in a flying car. No one said it was too much when Harry defeated Voldemort at the age of 11. Nobody said it was too much when Harry was picked for the Triwizard Tournament. Nobody said it was too much when all these things happened in the novels, because J.K. Rowling had more time to discuss what was going on, talk about the motivations, talk about the characters and the thoughts behind them and the plot. In this, you have dialogue. You have Harry said this, Ron said this, Draco said this, Hermione said this, Harry said this. And so if you had a Harry Potter book that was just dialogue, it would feel rushed, it would feel like it went by too quick, but you're still getting new content. And so I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars because I loved it so much, and that's not being blinded by adoration for J.K. Rowling, but I thought it was such a wonderful script. The experience of reading a play and just reading the words that these actors are saying, and actually going to a theatre, sitting down and watching it play out in front of you with the actors and the special effects and the magic, of course it's going to be completely different. The play has rave reviews. I don't think there's been anybody who's gone to the actual show and been disappointed by it. I thought the characters were really true to how they were in the book. Of course they're going to have changed. The trio are in their 40s now. They're going to be a bit different to how they were when they were 11 to 18. They're parents, they have different priorities, they have different trials they go through. They're not going to be the same. My absolute favourite character was Scorpius. I mean, can we just talk about Scorpius for a moment, because he is an actual precious angel who needs to be protected for the rest of his life. Whoever thought I would fall so deeply in love with Draco Malfoy's son? He befriends Harry's son, who's also in Slytherin. Their friendship was just so perfect, and I get why people say that they should have been in a relationship. I mean, having a gay couple in Harry Potter would have been wonderful diversity, but I'm still really pleased with the bond that they had. Oh, I love Scorpius so much, and he's such a nerd as well. I love that they've made Scorpius so different from Draco Malfoy, and they didn't just go down the easy route of having Malfoy's son become an evil wizard like his father. But also, on the other hand, Draco was lovely too. Like, we interacted with him quite a lot, and his relationship with Harry was so mature. They had banter, is the only word I can use, and I loved it. Some of the more unrealistic things that happened, you know, this is the wizarding world. But also, have you seen the world we live in? Every day you're looking on the news and you're seeing things that are totally unbelievable, but they've happened. I loved the alternate universes we got to see throughout the book. I think being able to see so many different realities of what could have happened. We had Hermione first as the Minister of Magic, which, I mean, I would not have expected anything less for Hermione, but I'm so proud that that's the actual job that she got. We had Ron, who ran his brother's joke shop. I thought that was lovely. We had Harry, who worked for the Ministry, and then their darling son Albus decided to play around with the time turner. So they went back in time and messed up the future. It reminded me so much of a Harry Potter sequel. I mean, loads of people said it sounded like fan fiction, but boy was it a very similar storyline to AVPS. If you haven't watched that and you've read the script, go watch a Harry Potter musical on YouTube, go watch a Harry Potter sequel, and just see how similar the time travel timelines are, because I think that's great. No words can describe my love for AVPM. So Albus messes around with the time turner and creates all these alternate universes that are just very slightly shifted. So Hermione, instead of being Minister of Magic, she's now a Defense Against Dark Arts teacher. Ron, instead of working at his brother's joke shop, he's now married to Padma Patil. Ron and Hermione aren't married. Albus is now in Gryffindor, not Slytherin, and all these little tweaks that happen every time Albus goes back and forth in time, it just shifts things ever so slightly. And it's really interesting how subtly they integrated all that. that you didn't even notice that things had changed until a particular line happened. So I thought it was really cleverly done. The climax of this story pretty much happens when Albus and Scorpius come back from one particular time-turning experience, and they have basically messed everything up. Voldemort is at large, Harry Potter is dead, Dolores Umbridge is back at Hogwarts, the world is upside down and nothing is right. And I think that it was one of the darkest moments of some of the entire Harry Potter book. Some people say this is one of the fluffier, lighter stories in the series, but actually in that particular bit I think it's one of the darkest. So Albus is now realising that he's majorly messed up and that he's got to bring his dad back from the dead. No easy feat, but you know, Harry Potter managed to defeat the Dark Lord at the age of 11, so why can't Albus? So he works really hard to try and get everything back to normal, and the ending is really, really lovely. It all works out in the end, and that's how a play should be. You should walk out of a theatre production feeling happy that everything has been resolved. If you'd have ended on a really dark, deep note or a cliffhanger, people would not enjoy the play as much. So I thought the ending was perfect. One of the only quibs I had with this story was Voldemort daughter storyline. Now I understand that Voldemort doesn't feel love, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have physical attraction to people and that he doesn't have a personal life in that sense. So Voldemort ends up having a daughter with Bellatrix Lestrange, and I could see it happening, but it wasn't my absolute favourite part of the book because throughout the whole of the 7th book Bellatrix was supposed to be pregnant and have this child, and we got no indication of that throughout, and it just felt a bit tacked on at the end to add a bit more drama. I think there were kind of other ways that it could have been done. It was also so emotional. So there's one scene where they're back in time, everyone's there, Harry, his son, Ginny, they're at Godric's Hollow and they're watching Voldemort kill his parent, and I just cried and cried and cried. I don't think anything's hit me that hard in a long time. Obviously Harry couldn't go and stop anything from happening, he couldn't mess with the future, but the raw emotion that filled that scene made it one of the most heartbreaking I've ever read in my life. J.K. Rowling would never have endorsed this play if she wasn't entirely happy with every aspect of it. She is so protective of her Wizarding World that I don't think she'd let anything be released with her name on it that she wasn't 100% proud and happy with. So if she's pleased with this, I am all for believing everything is real and true and just appreciating and loving all this extra information that we get. I think I'm taking it as an extended epilogue rather than a separate book or separate story, but I still absolutely adored it, and I think a lot of people do love it. There were some moments in this book that had stage directions that were magical, like the children get swallowed by a bookcase or Dementors come flying or little things like that, and I was just sitting there reading this throughout the whole time wondering just how they were going to put so much magic into a play. Because when it's filmed it's easy to do CGI special effects, but in theatre it's all real in front of you live as it's happening. You can't just add it in afterwards. I think it's going to be incredibly magical to watch, and I still haven't got tickets. I've tried every single time they've been released. I've been waiting on the Friday 40 for the last couple of weeks. I waited in line for 13 hours that day when all those tickets were released, and I still didn't get any luck. So I'm just hoping that one day I'll get there. But for now I'm just going to reread this book a million times and absorb every aspect of it that I can and just love it, because this is brand new Harry Potter information that J.K. Rowling has endorsed, and I think every time you read it I think I'm going to get something new out of it, and I'm just really happy that this has been released. Also, can we talk about the Trolley Witch for a minute? Because what? I was so confused for a moment when I was reading about her. Albus and Scorpius are on the train and they're trying to escape and get off. And so the trolley witch is responsible in getting them to Hogwarts safely. And all of a sudden, these two children are trying to jump off and she's throwing pumpkin pasties at them. And they're exploding like a grenade. And she's like, well, you better see what I can do with my chocolate frogs too. And there are some really funny lines in it. I loved Draco as a dad. The absolute adoration and love he has for his son is just beautiful to see. There's a moment where Albus, Scorpius and their accomplice take Polyjuice Potion to become Harry, Ron and Hermione to infiltrate the Ministry. And they bump into the actual trio whilst they're there, and Albus suggests as Ron and the real Hermione is there. And so Albus goes and kisses Hermione in pretense of being Ron. And I'm just like, that's your aunt that you're kissing. You're like 14 and you're kissing your dad's best friend and joking about having another baby. The actual line that Albus says is, let's have another baby. Either a baby or a holiday. How did Hermione not realise that that's not Ron? Because Hermione is one of the cleverest witches. How did she not know that that wasn't her husband? And it's never mentioned again throughout the entire book. I've loved to have seen Hermione's reaction when she realises that wasn't Ron that she was talking to, because it's just glossed over for the rest of it and we don't mention it again. I just thought it was a bizarre scene. I liked the dreams that Harry had that sort of flash back to Harry's childhood at Privet Drive, and the sort of PTSD moments that he had where he woke up and he was all frantic because he was remembering all these horrible things that happened to him as a child. And I think that's really important to have in this book, because Harry couldn't have come out of his childhood without some sort of psychological issue. And I think the fact that they acknowledged that was wonderful, and you got to see mixed up dreams that he was having, and I thought they were fascinating. The father-son relationship between Albus and Harry was so realistic, and being Harry Potter's son would be a big burden to carry. I mean, you think about all the things Harry did, and all of a sudden he's got a son who's in Slytherin, which, by the way, I don't believe is a bad house. Slytherins, they're not all evil people and horrible, they just have different personality traits, but being a Slytherin when your dad's Harry Potter is quite a difficult thing to come to terms with. And Harry and Albus have a really rocky relationship, which I think every parent and child goes through at some point in their adolescence. I think Harry probably would have if he'd have grown up with his mum and dad. You're battling to grow up, but also you need that looking after when you're that young. And so the fact that it all settled and they began to have a really lovely, genuine father-son relationship towards the end of the book was really heartwarming to see. And the fact that Albus went back in time and he actually got to see James and Lily, Harry's parents, potter about. That was an unexpected pun. I like that. James and Lily Potter pottering about. They saw James and Lily Potter going about with their son back in time, and Albus comes back to the present and he's like, Dad, I think you'd have really liked your parents. I think I would have really got on well with my grandparents. And it was just so heartwarming that they like bonded over Harry's mum and dad. Professor McGonagall again was another character. I was just like, I've missed you so much. She wasn't in it massively, but the moments that she was in, I was just like, oh, I do love Professor McGonagall with all my heart. She's so badass, and she didn't change in this book either. She was very true to her character. There was a moment where Harry's in one of his rages and he's like, Scorpius and Albus can't be in the same room together or even talk to each other or look at each other because they're just getting into mischief. And McGonagall is supposed to be the one looking out for both of them and keeping them apart, and she goes to find boys and they're underneath the invisibility cloak, like hiding from her, and she realises they're under the cloak and she goes, well, I didn't see anything, and she walks out. And I was just like, classic McGonagall. I also really like how Snape got to see that Harry had named one of his sons after him, Albus's middle name is Severus, and we got to go back in time and see Snape's reaction to finding out, and it actually says that he was really moved by it. I really like that. Also, there's a line that Scorpius says that I found hilarious. There's some really funny moments in this mixed in with like more of the darker bits, but Scorpius says, "We have to destroy the time turner. It's time that time turning became a thing of the past." And Albus is just like, "You're quite proud of that phrase, aren't you?" And Scorpius is just like, "Been working on it all day." So there are some really just funny moments. Overall, in conclusion of all these rambly thoughts that I had, I think if you really loved Harry Potter and you miss it and you want to go back into the world and just be immersed into the magic again, definitely read it. Read it with an open mind. Separate it a little bit from the books. Imagine it visually playing out in front of you. I adored this book so much. Please comment down below your thoughts on it. If you agreed with anything I said, if you have different opinions, I'd love to hear what you thought, and I will see you next week. Bye!